Welcome to Melman Center Grand Rounds. I'm Shelley Bear. I'm the Director of Leadership Training Initiatives here at the Melman Center, and I co-facilitate Lifespan IPC Interprofessional Collaborative with Dr. Friedman. Hi, Larry. We're sponsoring today's Grand Rounds. So we are going to talk about interoception, the eighth sense, the science of how we each uniquely feel. I'm very excited to introduce Kelly Mahler. Kelly Mahler is an award-winning occupational therapist, author, and interoception groupie, known for her boundless curiosity and fondness for crunching pine cones. Holding a doctorate in occupational therapy, she has served school-aged children and adults for over 22 years. Kelly is an author of 12 resources, including the Interoception curriculum, now used in over 30 countries worldwide. She enjoys speaking internationally on interoception, neuro-affirming practices, and playful strategies for inner exploration using a lens of curiosity, validation, and empathy. So welcome, Kelly. Look forward to hearing you today.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Just a big thank you for inviting me here and for sponsoring this event. And thank you to everyone that's tuning in, whether you're here live or you're in the recording. I'm going to go ahead and start screen sharing here. Can you see my screen okay? I'm going to assume, unless I hear otherwise, that we're good to go. Like Shelley mentioned, we are going to be talking about the topic of interoception. I have so much I wanted to share, and we have a very short little bit of time. So just know that I'm only scratching the surface of what we have learned about interoception over the past few decades. And I will point you to a couple different resources that if this is a topic that you are really interested in, you can learn more. So I'm just going to dive right into the science of interoception. As Shelley mentioned in the introduction, the interoception is nicknamed the eighth sense or the eighth sensory system. And so as that nickname implies, it is a sense within all of our bodies. Just like all of our other sensory systems, interoception has a set of receptors located in our body in charge of pulling in sensory information. For interoception, our interoceptors are in most of our major organs. So you have interoceptors in like your heart and your lungs and your stomach, your bladder, your colon, your skin. We also have like receptors in our bones, our joints, our muscles. We have interoceptors like in the lining of our mouth, in our eyeballs, in our brain. So these receptors are they're extensively located throughout all of the tissues of our body. And these receptors are pulling in information about the condition of all of these body parts. So how are all of these different body parts feeling? And so all of that information is collected by these interoceptors, and we know that it's processed in many, many areas of the brain and networks in the brain. One of the primary areas of the brain that is really like mentioned in interoception research is the insula. It's been nicknamed the interoception center of the brain. So we know all of these receptors within our body pulling in information about the condition of our body, and this information is processed in our brain, including the insula, and really our brain is doing a lot of work with this information, but one of the biggest things is using these incoming clues or incoming messages as clues to our emotions. So for example, if we think about like the receptors in the lining of our stomach, like pulling in information essentially about like what is the condition of our stomach? Like, is it full? Is it empty? Does it feel gassy? Is it nauseous? Sometimes people talk about like a butterfly sensation they might have in their stomach. And so those body sensations are used in our brain or by our brain as clues to what emotion we're experiencing, whether that's maybe we're nervous or scared or excited. Interoception helps us feel a wide variety of affective emotions, but also, which this is a new term, it was a new term to me, interoception helps us to experience homeostatic emotion. And what that means is interoception helps us know when we're experiencing pain or illness. It helps us know when we're hungry or when we're full or when we're thirsty or when we're hot or when we're cold or when we need to pee or when we need to poop or when we're sleepy. So lots of different feels happening because of this sense. So basically, interoception science is showing us that our emotions come from our body. Our body is a really important part of our emotional experience, and that includes both affective and homeostatic emotions. So interoception has a lot of really important jobs. Basically, the one of the biggest jobs is really to give us information about how our body feels and what it needs for survival, for health, for regulation. So a little bit of the history of interoception. Interoception tends to be new to a lot of people, and there's a good reason for that. It was first defined back in the early 1900s by a guy named Sir Charles Sherrington. He wrote a paper on two new sensory systems, one called interoception and one called proprioception. And the world went wild over his work in proprioception, and he won a Nobel Prize for his work. But in that shuffle of excitement over proprioception, interoception kind of got lost. Like, people like didn't really pay attention to this important sense. And it took almost a century later, like 100 years later, there was a brilliant neuroscientist, Dr. Bud Craig, who started studying interoception in his lab. And 100 years later, he now has access to a lot of technical or technology advances, right? He has brain imaging machines, et cetera. And so Dr. Craig was really able to give a lot of like science and like proof behind the fact that we have these receptors in our body and our areas of the brain are processing this unique information. And so he was able to really give structure around this sense called interoception. And so I have this picture here on your screen, and you can kind of see like the history of published studies in interoception really like kind of stayed pretty much near zero until over here, like kind of closer to modern day, where it is just rapidly spiking. There's now over 5,000 published papers on interoception, and the output over the last 4 years alone is more than the past 59 years. So it is rapidly growing. The National Institute of Health in our country has declared interoception a research domain of priority. It has funded millions and millions of dollars into interoception science. The NIH hosts an annual interoception conference every year. So this is a very, very hot topic, and it's only going to continue to grow. And we're going to continue learning so much about this topic. So that's the science of it. I like to talk about the practical side of interoception. That's really where my work has been focused on taking a very technical and rich body of literature and saying, okay, what does this mean for all of our lives? How can we help support our patients, our clients, in their interoception journey of understanding their body and what their body uniquely needs for health and regulation, et cetera. So the practical application here, there's one more definition, and this is something called interoceptive awareness, or IA. If you've read any interoception literature before, you might have seen a large mix of terms used. Really, this field is such in its infancy. Researchers are trying to debate and decide upon what terms to use and, how to best assess interoception. Lots of questions out there. So this is where my colleagues and I stand with this definition of IA, and it's really the practical side of it. And this definition continues to evolve as our work evolves, but IA, the way it stands right now, is a three-part process, and that is really involves our ability to notice our body signals. So maybe notice like how our heart is feeling, Is it beating slowly? Is it racing? Or maybe noticing how our bladder feels. Is it full? Is it empty? Is it sore? Our stomach? Is it fluttery? Is it empty? Whatever the body signal is, but noticing that feeling, that body signal, and then being able to connect that body signal to the emotion. So do we know what this feeling in our body means to us? And then the third part of it is the regulating part, the action. Like, do we know what action our body uniquely needs in this moment to be regulated? And so we really talk about in our work and the strategies, building these body, emotion, action connections, and like really helping our patients to connect or reconnect to these body, emotion, action connections. These are very, very different for each one of us. And we'll talk about this in just a little bit, but interoception science is like really, really showing us just how different each of our bodies are. And so like what your body feels like when you're anxious is likely different than what my body feels like when I'm anxious. And what your body feels like when you're thirsty, likely different than what my body feels like when I'm thirsty. So this interoceptive awareness is highly unique for each person. So we know very little about the development of interoception. There's only a few studies looking at interoception in infants, so I can't wait to see how this evolves. We don't know any like norms or really like what like a 3-month-old should be able to do interoceptively versus a 3-year-old versus a 33-year-old. But what we do know is that a certain degree of IA is present at birth for most humans, right? Most human bodies born into this world wired to notice comfort and discomfort within their bodies. So if you think about that from like a practical standpoint, thinking about maybe perhaps if you've known any infants born into this world, just wired to notice how their body feels. Now, do they understand like, oh, this feeling in my body means I'm cold, or oh, this feeling in my body means I'm hungry, or oh, I need a diaper change? Probably not, but they do notice a certain degree of comfort and discomfort. And so like this cycle, I just want to share this cycle with you and kind of like where we're thinking how interoception develops. So we have like an infant, human infant, right? And let's just say they're experiencing some form of internal discomfort. And so what they do next is most likely they express that discomfort to other people. Now, this could look different for each infant. So maybe they're crying, but maybe maybe they are just turning their head away, or maybe they're crying, or maybe they're tightening their muscles or turning red, or maybe they're having a startle response, right? So they're expressing discomfort. And then that is where the co-regulator steps in. And they're like, uh-oh, like something's off in the infant's body. And that co-regulator needs to use a lot of curiosity to figure out what is the interoceptive discomfort? What is the source of the discomfort? So they go through the motions like, oh, do you need to be fed? Or, oh, do you need a diaper change? Or, oh, do you need wrapped in a blanket? Or do you need the lights dimmed? So they go through this process. They make a hypothesis and they see if whatever they hypothesize, like maybe, oh, look, let's dim the lights and see what happens. So they keep trying things until they figure out what is the source of the discomfort. And once they get it right, that infant's body is flooded with feel-good sensations delivered directly from that caregiver. So maybe that caregiver's feeding them. The source of the discomfort was hunger, and that infant's body starts to feel relief, right? So there's a connection there between the caregiver offering something that is providing these feel-good sensations to the infant. So this process is happening many, 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 many times a day, and it's really rooted in interoceptive awareness. It's like really set off by IA, that infant noticing how their body feels. And so this co-regulation process is happening many times a day. And that infant, as they grow, starts to learn a lot more about their body through this process. They start to realize like, oh, this feeling in my body means I'm hungry. And oh, when my caregiver feeds me, when I eat, this feeling in my body goes away. So they start to develop these body, emotion, action connections of like really being able to notice a bunch of body signals, being able to connect the body signal to the meaning, like what does this feeling in my body mean for me, and then know what to do, the action piece of what I need to do to regulate. This process also is giving the infant messages that their insides are worthy of attention. They're worthy of other people's attention. They're worthy of their own attention. They're learning that expressing their inner needs is helpful, and their caregiver feels safe and cozy and all those feel good sensations. So this is really like happening very, very often in loving attachments. And so there's this little graphic here. You can get this for free on my website if it's of interest to you. But it's just really a simple way of showing like that we're all like we know every human body is born into this world requiring co-regulation. We know that's a back and forth process, but just for simple sake, right now, like we're talking about co-regulation where we're relying on other people to like figure out what our body needs. We don't have that understanding about our body yet. But through that cycle, through that co-regulation process, we begin to understand our body more. We're able to notice and connect and regulate our body signals with a higher degree of skill. So that's like where the IA comes in. It really like provides this bridge over to self-regulation, over to understanding our bodies enough that we can begin to manage our body's needs independently. It doesn't mean that we're never going back to co-regulation because you can go back and forth over this bridge, but to fairly expect self-regulation, to fairly expect, our clients to like be able to manage their anxiety or whatever it is, they really need that interoceptive awareness in place, that understanding of their body in order to be very successful with that self-regulation. Otherwise, if they don't have a firm bridge in place, that IA piece, they are left back in co-regulation where they are really relying on other people in their world to manage a lot of their bodily needs. Okay, so now I'd like to talk about a breakdown in interoceptive awareness. Lots and lots of people living in this world with some form of a breakdown in that IA process. You might have patients or clients, or perhaps even yourself, that you might have a breakdown in the noticing piece. So, I have clients that might not ever notice signals letting them know when they're hungry or when they need to pee or when they're getting overwhelmed or anxious. And so that really like kind of just stops the rest of the process. Again, they're relying on co-regulation to help monitor those needs. But I do have clients that they notice a lot of body signals. They're just not sure what they mean. Like they're not able to connect those body signals to the emotion. And so that does tend to shut down the rest of that regulation process. And again, many times they're relying on caregivers to help them co-regulate. And this is even adult clients. But then I also have some clients that they notice body signals and they know like, oh, this means I'm anxious or this means I'm overwhelmed from sensory, but they're not sure what to do to regulate their body signals. Many of my clients have been taught a lot of coping skills before I meet them. Um, in fact, I have a friend, Chloe Rothschild, who is an autistic adult, and we do a lot of trainings together. And she talks about how she was the encyclopedia of coping skills when she was younger. She had been taught hundreds, she says, hundreds of coping strategies when she was younger, but the amount that she could use in the moment was zero because she didn't like have a good relationship, a good understanding of her body, letting her know like, hey, now would be a really great time to use deep pressure. But now your body's feeling a little different. Your body could really use some deep breathing right now or a walk. So really, she was just memorizing coping skills, but she wasn't sure what to do in the moment based on this breakdown in IA, like what her body truly needed in that moment. So these breakdowns can happen in 1, 2, or 3 parts of the process. And I just wanted to zoom in here on a breakdown in the noticing. So the top part here, number 1. We all have a range of how aware we are of our body signals. So some of you might be very aware of your body signals and others of you might be less aware. So there's this like range of awareness. And on each endpoint of this range are extremes. And so we know that for some people, they report that they have a muted inner experience where their body signals go completely unnoticed. Like they might not ever notice signals letting them know when they're getting anxious or when they are hungry or they need to poop. Or a lot of times people that have a muted inner experience, they do notice body signals, but only when those body signals get to a really big place. So they only notice they're getting overwhelmed when they're in a meltdown or shutdown, or they only notice they're hungry when they are hangry, like it's at last minute, like emergency, like I need to eat right now kind of thing. So that's the muted side affecting that ability to notice body signals. But then if you zoom over to the other side of this range, there's the intense inner experience. And for some people, they describe their body signals as like really strong, really overpowering, very distracting. They might have one or two body signals that are like all encompassing. So like I had a client a few years ago that could feel every meal he ate moving through his digestive tract. So it's like a really intense inner experience. Or for some people that have this intense inner experience, they describe their inner world as like having a lot of different body signals, like it's inner chaos. One of my clients said that when it's like when you shake like a glitter timer, one of those glitter timers, and the glitter's going everywhere, like that was what the inside of her body was like. And so she didn't know like what body signal to notice, what it all meant. It was just inner chaos. A lot of people with the intense side of things have a lot of somatic complaints that many times can't find medical reasons for because they are feeling a lot of feels in their body. So we have this range of awareness, and it does create a breakdown in the noticing of the body signals if you're at the extremes. And another thing good to know about this range of awareness is that most of us have a mix of like some of us might be more aware of certain body signals and less aware of others. For people that live in the extreme points, they might have some body signals that are muted and some that are intense. They might notice, like they might have a muted sense for hunger and anxiety, but have an intense experience for pain and so forth. So it's kind of a mixed situation. It's just really important to know that these extremes do exist. And so this next slide I included in the handout. It's really just a resource. I'm not going to go through everything, but people ask like, what are some signs of these IA breakdowns? And so these are just some of the things I look for. If you see one of these things, it doesn't mean it's definitely due to IA. Like it just makes me curious. So like if someone is having any bowel or bladder differences, makes me really curious about interoceptive awareness. Like if you just take a moment to think, I'm like, how do you know when you need to pee or when you need to poop? For many people, it is a sensation-driven process, an interoception-driven process. If someone's not seeking out food or drink, or if they're high frequency eaters, both of those things may be really curious about IA for a lot of reasons. I have a lot of high frequency eater clients that can just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. And they seem to like either never have like that full off switch in their body, or sometimes that can be due to a breakdown in the connection piece where they're noticing a feeling in their body, but they're misconnecting it to hunger, although it's something else altogether. Like maybe it's gut pain, or maybe it's anxiety, or they have a breakdown in the action piece where they don't know what to do to regulate their body, what action to take, and the only thing they really know that many times brings comfort to their body is eating. And so there's so many interoception curiosities within each one of these clues or signs. If anyone has an intense or muted response to illness, to pain, like I had a client a few years ago that walked around on a broken femur for 3 days before anyone knew it was broken. That's a really muted experience of pain. So lots of homeostatic examples for you on this slide. And then the affective side, we talked about like not seeking out coping strategies. Like that just makes me curious about someone's IA. Many times it's not them refusing. It has a lot to do with interoception. If their emotions go from 0 to 100 in a split second, makes me curious about IA. if they have alexithymia or difficulty identifying and sharing feelings or emotions. Makes me very curious about IA. I don't know if any of you are familiar with alexithymia. It's like defined difficulty identifying and describing emotions that now in the science has been supported as what underlies alexithymia is a breakdown in IA. So lots of things here. If you maybe have patients that have unhealthy attempts at changing the way their body feels, so things like self-harm and addictions are all ways that someone is attempting to change their interoceptive state. So there's lots of IA embedded in many of these clues. And then this is just one more resource slide. I just summarized research for you. This is not an exhaustive list, but there's so many different diagnoses and neurotypes that are connected to IA breakdowns. So we know a lot of autistic people have IA breakdowns. Depression, anxiety, very connected to interoception differences in the research or IA breakdowns. In fact, I think I have a study, yes, on this slide. This is kind of an old article now. It's 2018, but it's still a really good one. It's a white paper, and it's really all about, it was a lot of different physicians and PhD researchers doing essentially a review of the literature, looking at the connection between interoception and mental health. And what they found and what they talk about in this paper is really a great thing to read if you're interested, is that almost every single mental health condition that exists has been tied to IA breakdowns. So there's definitely a very strong connection between IA and mental health. Do we need to understand that connection more? Yes, we do. Absolutely. But we just know there is a very strong connection between the two. So I'll just kind of point out a few more things here on this slide. Eating disorders is a really big area of research right now in the interoception field. Lots of interoception connections there. Schizophrenia, there was just like actually a really cool new study coming out looking at schizophrenia and interoception. And in fact, showing that interoception differences or these IA breakdowns are very common in the early stages of schizophrenia. And the researchers were just curious if perhaps that could be a sign or a clue of someone's mental health at the time. And then I'll just point out one more thing on the slide. Trauma disorders, another huge area of research in the interoception field. Many trauma researchers finding that almost every person that has experienced trauma, whether it's an early life trauma, whether it's an acute trauma, has some form of an IA breakdown. So this doesn't mean if you have a patient that, for example, is an ADHD or is autistic or has an eating disorder, it doesn't mean 100% that they're going to have an IA breakdown. These are just diagnoses that makes me really curious and explore this sense for them. Okay, so there's a lot of this like talk about interoception and mental health. I just did an entire social media month-long campaign on interoception and mental health. If you're on social media, you can get all of that information for free. I'll give you my social media at the end of this, but there's a lot of questions out there. Like for so long, mental health was like this neck up model of care, right? Like it was so cognitive. It was so rooted in the brain and thoughts. And a lot of this interoception science is at least pointing to the fact that mental health, at least partially, is in the body, and that this body piece, this interoception piece, is a key part, a key way into supporting mental health. And I wish I knew where this quote came from, but it says, without body signals, the brain has nothing to think or care about. And I think that like really captures the essence of interoception a lot of times. This body is such a pivotal aspect of mental health. So this is where I start thinking, okay, if these IA breakdowns are causing so many barriers for people, then where are they coming from? And this is yet another area that we don't know enough about in research, like in publications. I think it stands to reason, and this is not evidence-based. This is just kind of like practical, practical thoughts and also insights from the community, of like people that have lived experience, people that have interoception breakdowns. So I think it stands to reason that probably there are some people born into this world with organic interoception differences. It's part of their neurology. It's present at birth. We know that a lot of, like, for example, neurodivergent people are born with sensory differences from birth, and interoception is a sense. So I think that's where it stands to reason that some people could be just born into the world wired a little differently, right? Their interoception is just working a little differently. We need to know more about that. But what we do know from lived experience is there's a lot of um, things that we can go through in life that derail IA or create this breakdown. There's societal messaging, there's trauma, there's gaslighting, there's compliance approaches, there's emotion teaching. So I just want to go over a couple of these things briefly, because I think, probably respectfully guessing, a lot of your patients, your clients might have at least experienced one of these things. I think that many of us, even on this call, could have experienced one or multiple of these things. Like, so first of is like just society messaging in general, and I'm totally overgeneralizing here for time's sake, but most of us live in a society where there is just anti-body listening messages all around us. Like, we just, even sayings that we hear, like no pain, no gain. So like that's really saying ignore your body, right? Push through the pain or you can't win at life. Or there's no rest for the weary, or it's not that bad, or you're fine, or shake it off, or what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. From, I think that's a Kelly Clarkson a song. But like, so these messages are all around us, like pretty much like ignore your body, push through, you'll be fine kind of thing. Work yourself till you have a chronic health condition kind of messaging out there. And so it's all around us. This is all around us. Plus, we live in a society that is busy. Like, our attention is not usually on our body. It is go, 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 screen, 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 screen. So lots of things all around us, really like kind of breaking down our IA. So I want to shift gears here a little bit and just a little content. I'm going to talk about trauma just for this slide here in a more detail. So let's talk about this in a case of neglect, like early life trauma. So like, let's just say the infant is experiencing internal discomfort, they're expressing it, and there's no co-regulator there to step in, to use curiosity, to figure out what is the interoceptive need in that infant's body. So there's nothing being done to figure that out. That infant does not receive any feel-good sensations from any co-regulator. So their body remains in this state of discomfort, of pain. And what do they most likely need to do to survive their world? Most likely they need to disconnect from their bodies, right? So they have to suppress their signals, dissociate, like whatever is the term that is meaningful to you, but that is disconnect from interoception, and then they stop expressing. And so also these little infants are getting messages like their insides are not worthy of attention by anyone outside of them, but also themselves. And they are just disconnecting to survive their world. And we see this even into adult populations that have experienced early life neglect. They have so many IA breakdowns and so much body mistrust and so much unreliable connections and relationships to their body, which results in a lot of dysregulation. Okay, I'm just going to really quickly touch on compliance here. Compliance is all around us. There are they are just like in all of our systems, especially in the United States. Like our educational system is rooted in compliance. So almost every person, I mean, there's some really unique schools out there, but I'm overgeneralizing for time's sake, but most of us are products of educational systems that are rooted in compliance. And it's our most dysregulated students that get exposed to the most compliance. They are put into sometimes classrooms that are all 100% compliance all day long. And let's just take a look at the damage this does to IA. So let's just say you're experiencing internal discomfort and you're expressing that internal discomfort. And there's a strategy that maybe someone, like there's a clip down chart in the classroom, and the teacher's saying, well, do you need to clip down right now? So basically, do I need to publicly shame you for expressing your interoceptive need right now? Or there's, there's a strategy called planned ignoring. So we're going to ignore them when they're demonstrating quote unquote attention seeking behavior. I do not like that term, but the other day I was in a preschool classroom, a little guy, 4 years old, crying on the floor. And one of the behaviorists in the classroom said, I went to go over to say something and they're like, oh, no, 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 no. We're ignoring this behavior. That's attention seeking behavior. I'm like, this 4-year-old, he's a baby. He's expressing internal discomfort. He deserves to know that his insides are worthy of attention. And so it's very damaging, this compliance. It's really teaching people that their insides are not worthy, that that conditions us to ignore what our body needs in order to please other people, in order to get reinforcers, in order to get tablet time, in order to get access to things that feel good to our body. Like there's a strategy called first, then. So first do your math, like do what I want you to do, and then you can have access to the swing that feels good to your body. So we're hijacking comfort here and saying you have to earn your comfort. So compliance just has so many bad anti-interoception messaging. And I think it's important just to be aware of these things because many of us have been subject to these, but especially many of our patients, if they have a history of dysregulation, they probably have been exposed to a lot of these approaches even more so. And so there's really no curiosity in any of this compliance. There's very little consideration for the internal experience. Like what could be going on in this person's body? What could be the source of their discomfort? It is just like you need to stop expressing your discomfort, right? So there's no co-regulation. There's no feel-good sensations being delivered. And this cycle is completely disrupted and very much impactful in IA. Okay, so I think this is two more things I wanted to just kind of touch on here. So this is like um, there's a lot of invalidation and accidental dismissals when it comes to interoception. So maybe you're expressing you're having internal discomfort. Maybe you express it, and someone says like, "Oh, it's fine. It's not that loud in here," right? Like that's kind of dismissing. Like maybe you're having pain from how loud the environment is, but someone else is saying you can't possibly be feeling that way. And a lot of these statements I have made, by the way. A lot of these statements I was saying from a place of love. I was trying to help someone feel better. I was trying to like kind of not make it a big deal, but really what we've discovered is like it is a really big deal to a lot of bodies and a lot of interoceptive profiles. And so for me to say it's not that loud in here, it's really based on my experience, not on another person. Or someone might say something like, "Oh, you can't possibly be hungry. You just ate." Or you're fine, brush it off, or it's not that big of a deal. Like these are usually said in in an effort of support, but if you really think about it through an interoception lens, it can be very dismissive of a person's internal experience. And if you are someone that has these things said to you on a frequent basis, like think about what that might do to your relationship with your body signals. Like a lot of my clients start to believe that their inner experience is wrong. They don't trust their inner experience. And so, with all of these dismissive statements, there's no curiosity there. We're just saying, oh, it's fine. Just ignore it. You're good. You're good. Like, instead of being like, oh, like, what's going on? Like, let's do something to help your body feel better. Right. And so, there's no curiosity. There's not a lot of feel good sensations being delivered there. Right. And this whole process is really disrupted. And then finally, emotion labeling, another thing that I have been trained to do actually, to label my clients' emotions. It's validating, it helps them understand how they're feeling. So, like saying something like, oh, look, it looks like you're frustrated right now. So, this is vulnerable because all of these things I have done, like emotion labeling, I've used compliance approaches, I've made dismissive statements, like vulnerably sharing here. So let's think about this emotion labeling. Like what we're hearing from people is that, like, many times when we label someone else's emotions, we are at high risk of being wrong. Um, and so if you're a person that has your emotions labeled for you on a frequent basis, and all these other people are saying, oh, you look frustrated right now, or you must be anxious right now, and that's not a match for your inner experience, you could start to doubt yourself. Like, if all these other people are saying that I'm frustrated, then maybe I am the one that's wrong here. So it really starts to derail that IA again. And so let's just say you have internal discomfort, you're expressing it, and someone says, oh, it looks like you're frustrated right now, or oh, you're out of 4 on your 4-point scale, or you're close to the red zone, or that must have made you feel angry. Like, all of that is kind of us assuming that we already know what your experience is, instead of approaching it with curiosity. Like, you're expressing something, and I want to understand what it is you're expressing, instead of assuming that I know and labeling it. And so, so there's very little curiosity here in emotion labeling, and not a lot of feel good sensations being delivered. And then the last part here goes along with that. But there's a lot of programs out there and approaches that kind of teach the way an emotion should feel. And if you can't see me, I'm using air quotes around the word should. Um, I said in the beginning, like, interoception science is really showing us there's no single footprint of an emotion. So teaching the way an emotion should feel is really outdated. So what that means is like saying, like, oh, like, angry is like when your fists are tight and your voice is loud and your skin is hot. Like, that's not a match for every single person's body. Or hunger is a growling stomach. So if you're being taught the way an emotion should feel and it's not a match for your experience, that's going to make interoception very confusing for you. It's really going to derail that body, emotion, action connection. All right, so that's a summary, things that can create breakdowns. And now I have just a few minutes to offer you a couple things that restore IA. This is the part where I could spend hours with all of y'all talking about all of the supports we're offering in this area. So first, like, all of our interoception strategies are rooted in curiosity. We are on a quest to understanding each person's unique internal experience. And then there's validation, of validating inner experiences, even when they are different than what we expect. Like, that is really the core to all of this, is curiosity and validation. So these are the 5 things I'm going to really quickly go through. This one's really fast, but this is just really reflect on the approach. If you are someone is interested in learning more about what the difference is between compliance-based and interoception-based approaches, there's a free poster on my website. So if you want to check that out, I'm not going to read it here, but you can download this, and kind of, we use this as a reflection tool sometimes in the teams that I'm in, and seeing, like, can we make some baby steps away from compliance and towards more of an interoception focused approach. The second one, and this is always going to be very highly dependent on the patients that you're serving and, like, how much interaction you have, but, like, really, if we can, we want to model our own interoception or IA process. So modeling our own body, emotion, action connection. So, like, for example, like, oh, like, gosh, like, my head is pounding from all of this noise right now. Oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Like, I need to put on my noise canceling AirPods, right? So, like, I'm modeling how the body signal I'm noticing, I'm modeling that I'm connecting it to the emotion, and then I'm using an action to regulate my body. What this does is it just, like, kind of it models that there is this process happening in my body. It is trying to, like, kind of expose and normalize the process, and also get interoception vocabulary out there. Many people report even adults report that they have a very limited interoception vocabulary. Many of us don't walk around narrating the way our body feels. Like maybe you do, but I know a lot of people I've talked to don't. So many of us don't really develop this really rich vocabulary for describing our inner feels. So just like really practicing this is actually helpful to us because it connects us to our body. If we're modeling out loud, we have to be noticing our bodies, but also can really get that language, that vocabulary out there. And then, like some of the updates to emotion teaching, instead of labeling emotions, we just get curious. So, and I play around with all different types of questions and statements. It's going to be different for each person, but I might say something like, I wonder how your body feels right now, or I wonder what's going on for you, or I wonder what you notice inside right now. Or I might like talk about what I see their body doing. Like, I see your body is wiggling back and forth. What does that mean for you? Or I might invite someone to draw or color what they're noticing in the inside of their body. Or I might model what's happening for me, like, oh, like I notice like my head is pounding from the noise right now. Is it same or different for you? So I use my experience, but then I follow it with curiosity. Is it same or different for you? Or I might invite someone to just point to where they're noticing something in their body. So there's lots of ways we can get more curious instead of labeling with an emotion. And that leads me to like when we're talking about emotion and emotion regulation, really starting at the body signal level. So I offered you that definition of IA, of noticing your body signals, like that's step one. And so that's really where we're coming at with this work, is starting at the body signal level of like, how do your body, or what is your body like telling you? What are these body signals? So we have this resource, it's called the Interoception curriculum, and it's divided into 3 sections. And section 1 is all about noticing the way different body parts feel. And then section 2 is, okay, now you're noticing body signals. What do they mean for you? Can you connect them to the emotion? And then section 3 is action, of what to do to regulate the way your body feels. And I just wanted to give you a little snapshot into this curriculum. And so we divide the first part of this work into 15 different body parts, and we work on we chunk this into one body part at a time, which reduces the cognitive load for a lot of people, and it really helps with attention for many people. Like, so we talk about like what are the different ways your hands can feel and the feet can feel, and we do this through a lot of hands-on learning. Like, it's very experimental. Like, we offer, I think I have one more slide here. Yeah, we offer lots of experiments to learn about the different ways your hands can feel. And we're doing this with really little kids all the way up through older adults. And like, it's play-based, it's experimenting. It's like holding a hand warmer or putting your hand in front of a fan or holding an ice pack and noticing how your hand feels. So we're giving lots of practice noticing how the body feels in playful and hopefully safe ways. And if a person's ready for it, we're also giving practice describing the sensation that is noticed. So we have a ton of experiments really learning about body signals. And we're only doing this work when a person is regulated, when they feel safe enough to enter into their body, to notice how their body is feeling. And so I'm going to stop here because I know that I want to have 10 minutes for questions, and I think I have 11 minutes left. So this last slide, this is how you can find more free resources. My website is packed with free stuff. We also have we're on all social media, but if you have questions about interoception, we have a private Facebook group. It's called Interoception, the Eighth Sensory System. And when I say private, that's kind of a joke in a way, because I think there's like 50,000 people in it, but it's a very supportive community. So if you have a question, it's a great place to post. You can even post anonymously if you have to. And there's lots of people that are willing to answer questions there. So I am going to go ahead and turn things over and see if anyone has any questions.
Dr. Mahler, thank you very much. This was fabulous and certainly an introduction to a lot of people, a lot of the audience. And I want to just thank you and applaud you and hope that some of the younger people, especially, not only the younger people, but the younger people especially can see a future as you were encouraging, especially at the beginning of your presentation, on the research that still needs to be done in children and young children, especially.
Yeah.
I don't have a question, just wanted to give you an applause.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
There are a lot of comments in the chat too about interesting, informative.
Hi, Kelly. My name is Christina Pujol. I'm a speech language pathologist. I love this presentation, and I think it's very important that we all, working with young children, start thinking about how this eighth sense impacts their behavior in school, thinking about teachers in preschool settings, like your story of the child that had a behavior, right? Communicating something, and really attending to that as a communication. So I really appreciate this, and also some personal is, my son, he's almost 4, and I feel like he struggles with this. He still needs a lot of co-regulation from me. So bringing my skills as a parent and bringing my skills as a speech language pathologist and bridging that interoception is something that I'm really interested in learning more about.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, thank you so much. I feel like sometimes we have this like, I don't even know what to call it, like an age cliff. And if a kid needs co-regulation past this age cliff, then they're pathologized. And it's like, oh, they have, challenging behavior or like whatever it is. And the fact of the matter is just some bodies need more co-regulation for a little bit longer to really like, securely understand their bodies. And so I love what you're saying and that your son just needs, he just needs a little bit more co-regulation. Yeah.
Kelly, I also am very grateful for this talk today. I think it was so important. Like you're bringing in that whole holistic approach. I like how you said in the beginning, walking around with just a head, and forgetting the rest of the body. And I have a chronic illness. I grew up with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So I very much appreciated this because I also disconnected from my body because I was in a lot of pain. So I'm just curious, are there any studies on children who have experienced a lot of trauma as far as surgeries, procedures, and how they have processed having interoception issues with their body? Because I love that, talking about how you feeling in your body, like
Yeah.
connecting it back to your body, the feeling.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of studies that I know of, but again, like there's over 5,000 now, so I don't have them all memorized, about specifically about children with early medical needs. But I think it's fair to categorize that as a trauma, correct? And then we do know that it is very well validated in the research that trauma, whether it's early life trauma or otherwise, significantly impacts the interoceptive system. So there's definitely a firm connection for there. And I see that clinically all the time, even like, kids that have been like NICU babies, like so much of their early life, it's survival. Like, of course, we want them to medically survive, but a lot of that medical survival tactics is just like, really just overriding their interoception from birth. Like they're not fed based on when they're hungry, they're fed on a schedule, et cetera, So yeah, good
Thank
connection.
you. I think, Jennifer, we have a question for you.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks for the talk. It was great. I work down here at CARD, which is the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. And I just, as you were talking, I was really just thinking, I know you were kind of describing the ABA protocols that we sometimes see. And so I was just wondering if you're feeling, is there any, I don't know, collaboration with the ABA industry and helping to maybe expand some of the compliance base and adding in some interoception and understanding? Have you felt any movement, or is there anything going on in that area?
I know that there's a lot of BCBAs and RBTs that are very interested in interoception, and I don't feel like compliance is exclusive to ABA. I mean, myself as an OT have used compliance. I see it everywhere, so I never like to single out. But I do know that ABA is historically rooted in compliance and observable behavior and not, much insight for the inner experience. So when we can collaborate, and I collaborate with so many BCBAs, I think that's the magic window there, that we can combine a lot of different approaches. And I know that, ABA is very much under fire for a lot of reasons. And I think they are under an identity crisis. And, I think they're working very hard to update themselves.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to, obviously
I know.
it's very important, and it has a space, but I just always think I would love to see like a combo, and where the money has gone, I think, for insurance company coverage and having these hours with children. And so it would be so awesome if it could be like,
yeah,
let's do that too.
So I 100% agree with you. And I think it's really unfortunate setting families up for a lot of very difficult decisions, because many times their insurance will only cover extensive services that is ABA focused. And, that's many times we know from people with lived experience that can be very detrimental. So I think we have a lot that could be maybe a whole hour-long conversation on a different day. I'm totally with you on that. It's just a really big dilemma in many different ways. Yeah.
I see a question in the chat from Carlos. He
Okay.
wants to know what would be a good way to help someone who is having trouble with noticing hunger related to interoception.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so without knowing the person, my generic response would be just start at that body signal level. So I wouldn't even I'm thinking about hunger in my head because I know that's one of their barriers, like functional barriers. But I'm going to explore different body signals with them. So I'm going to, do lots of experiments for noticing how their hands feel and their feet feel, really get them into their bodies, understanding their bodies, and really setting up a process where I'm validating anything they share with me, even if it's different than what I expect. And then as they become a little bit more trusting of their body, they're understanding their body, then we use those body signals as clues to things like hunger. Usually a lot of times when we're in that first part of the work, exploring the different ways your body parts feel, those connections naturally happen. They naturally start to notice hunger on a regular basis. Not always. We do sometimes have to do more structured things to help that connection happen. But a lot of times with just understanding body signals, it filters over to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Muller. Thank you, Shelley.
Yeah. Yep. I could also say that if you go to my website, one of our free resources, I keep talking about all the free printables, but one of them is a little booklet you can download, and it gives you 30 different interoception activities. So if you're looking you don't have the curriculum, no budget for the curriculum, there's, like I said, there's so many free things on my website, and one of them is a booklet that gives you 30 interoception activities.
Are Christina, you have it in the chat. Are other disciplines being trained in this? Is there more cross-disciplinary training? You're OT, speech, audiology, mental health. I'm a clinical social worker.
Yeah.
How are they being trained in this?
Oh, yeah. Usually my trainings are very diverse in background. So like you said, lots of speech, OT, mental health. Sometimes we get physiotherapy therapists or PTs in there. Lots of educators, lots of parents, and also we usually draw a big crowd of self-helpers too. Interoception has changed my life personally and professionally. So lots of people seeking this information out. I feel like when we can have an interdisciplinary approach to this work, it just makes it, so much more powerful because we each bring a different perspective.
Well, I do want to be mindful of everybody's time. It is 1, so thank you very much, Dr. Mahler. This was fantastic. We've never had a topic like this, so this is really informative. We're all clapping. We're big round of applause. Yeah.